2 months ago today, I released my plan for direct relief for St. Louis residents through the American Rescue Plan, a roadmap to recovery as we navigate the crises facing our city. This plan was informed by a community-driven input process that solicited nearly 2,500 public comments and held multiple public hearings to make sure St. Louisans had a voice in this process. We heard from families who, despite an economic recovery, needed support to get back on their feet. Even now, there are 3,000 eviction cases in the docket in the city of St. Louis. And today, I'll put this plan to motion by signing it. To those who are struggling to make ends meet, who can't make rent on time, who want to feel safe in your neighborhood, help is on the way. From senior services to free public transit for kids, there's more than $100 million in support for St. Louis families in this package. For example, more than $5 million for community violence intervention programs to make our neighborhoods safer. $1 million for mobile vaccination clinics and $500,000 in vaccination education. $12 million in rental and utility assistance. Nearly $5 million for youth jobs, programming, and sports to keep them engaged and safe. $2 million in early childhood education. $1.5 million to open a new center in North St. Louis to help connect entrepreneurs and small businesses with the legal and technical support they need to grow. $1.5 million to expand Wi-Fi and broadband options to bridge the digital divide. Along with these investments in assistance for unhoused neighbors, job training, community health workers, and more. And of course, $500 payments for thousands of St. Louis families. It's due to the hard work of the elected labor and faith leaders here today that families will be getting the support they need to put food on the table and pay their bills. We've seen cities across the country from St. Paul, Minnesota to Columbia, South Carolina to Los Angeles, California pilot similar programs. And by thinking boldly, we're putting St. Louis back on the map. Getting $500 in the pockets of families in a fair and equitable way is my administration's top priority. We'll have more updates in the coming days, and I want to make sure that we get this right. I'm grateful to Congresswoman Cori Bush for fighting so hard to get us these federal dollars. I'm grateful to Comptroller Darlene Green for her advice and support and participation throughout this process. I appreciate the members of the Board of Aldermen, especially those who submitted important amendments to strengthen this overall deal for our city. But I've remained deeply concerned about the additions that fly in the face of federal rules regulating how American Rescue Plan money can be spent. President Reed's refusal to bring his legislation fully in line with federal regulations on spending ARPA money has delayed relief from getting to families. My administration tried time and time again to work out a compromise, and he rebuffed us every single time. His obstinacy put St. Louis in a vulnerable position. As I've said time and time again, I will not spend federal dollars that our compliance auditors, city councilor, and comptrollers say do not follow U.S. Treasury guidelines. We've tried to reach a compromise, but St. Louis families can't wait any longer. So I will line item veto the portions that have been flagged as non-compliant with U.S. Treasury rules. This power is outlined in the city charter for the mayor's use, and I refuse to put St. Louis on the hook for paying tens of millions of dollars back to the federal government. We can't just pass bills and fix them on the back end. This is hundreds of millions of dollars, and we cannot afford to get this wrong. But here's what I will do. I will put forward an economic development plan that follows federal rules and, even more importantly, goes farther in transforming our city. We need to think beyond just 4 corridors. See, right now we're standing on Page Boulevard, which would not have qualified for federal dollars under the previous proposal. We need to work to lift every disinvested neighborhood, not just a few streets. With the American Rescue Plan, Build Back Better grants, and hopefully a comprehensive infrastructure package, we can seize this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to invest in St. Louis families. My administration is planning on reversing decades of disinvestment in all of North City and pockets of South City by investing not just in places, but in the people of our city. We need to invest in people so the longtime residents of our neighborhoods, the one who stuck around for years, will not be forced out. Just last week, the census revealed how St. Louis lost 18,000 residents, a good portion of those Black families leaving North City. It's no surprise that the status quo has intentionally disinvested from North St. Louis and other Black neighborhoods. But we have a golden opportunity to reverse that trend. Our communities need to be primed to take advantage of federal funds to make sure residents benefit, not just developers. That way we can retain our current residents while attracting more. We're developing a full-fledged plan on how we use hundreds of millions of dollars to reverse historic wrongs and transform communities that have been left behind. And these are just a few areas that we'll be focusing on moving forward. Affordable housing to address our housing gap. There is a shortage of 32,000 affordable rentals in the city. Meanwhile, 30,000 people are on a waiting list for housing vouchers. Workforce development in partnership with agencies and institutions like Rankin Technical College, who was gracious to let us stop by their campus today to train and educate residents to help them take advantage of good-paying jobs so they can stay in their neighborhoods as the dollars flow in. Infrastructure investments to repair our roads, bridges, streetlights, fill potholes, and more. And finally, economic empowerment through revolving loan funds for small minority-owned businesses, strategic efforts to utilize vacant buildings and land, technical assistance hubs for entrepreneurs and business owners, and more. We'll have more details as we see how the final infrastructure bill is taking shape. And I know Congresswoman Bush is working hard to bring St. Louisans more resources, just as she did with the American Rescue Plan. We have hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank to transform our city and build back better. Our goal is to make sure we seize this opportunity and invest these funds in ways that strengthen our neighborhoods and make our city a more equitable place, one where everyone, no matter their zip code, the color of their skin, can thrive. 2 months ago, I said that St. Louis can't go back to normal because normal didn't work for everyone. This package is a break from the past, a break from the status quo, and we fought hard to make it happen. Signing this legislation today is the first step in a long process to transforming St. Louis in a way that benefits every resident, not just the wealthy or well-connected. I look forward to working with elected leaders and the public as we plan to allocate hundreds of millions of more dollars in federal funding in a fair and equitable way. Thank you. And now, Alderwoman Tina Pihl from the 17th Ward.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tina Pihl. I am the Alderwoman of the 17th Ward. Today is a great day. Mayor Jones will be signing Board Bill 2, enacting $135 million in American Rescue Plan direct relief funds. Today, citizens of St. Louis will receive much needed COVID-19 direct relief funding. As Mayor Jones said, $500 of direct funds will be provided to 10,000 residents, $12 million in rental utility assistance, $8 million in emergency and shelter assistance, $1 million in mobile vaccination clinics. And there's more. In my campaign, one of my 3 principles I ran on was accountability. 4 entities in the city of St. Louis: City Councilor Matt Moak, Compliance Auditor Reuben Brown, Comptroller Darlene Green, and longtime federal advisor Jim Brown. They all determined that Section 6 in Board Bill 2 didn't follow the U.S. Treasury regulations. As such, passing this section of the bill, in which Mayor Jones will be line item vetoing, would not have been accountable. As a result, I voted present on this bill. There is much opportunity. There are a lot of great programs in Board Bill 2, as I mentioned, and there are more. Broadband, public Wi-Fi, COPS and the Clinicians Program, early childhood education, they will all be expanded because of Board Bill 2. There are more American Recovery Funds that are going to be coming, and we can allocate. We can allocate that to housing, community, and economic development. It is truly magnificent to have these funds to make our city thrive. As Alderwoman, I have already worked to generate funds for North St. Louis residents. I spearheaded and renegotiated the City Foundry Development Project, creating the Equitable Development Contribution. $1.8 million of direct funding is going to go to affordable housing repair in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. 50% of the funds are going to be allocated to the north side, and 50% of the funds to the 17th Ward. After 5 years, if the 17th Ward does not use all the funds, residents in North St. Louis will be eligible. I am ready to do the work to invest even more as your Alderwoman and as a city planner. I ran on the principles of accountability, community, and equity. The acronym is ACE. I believe when we make our decisions on these 3 principles, we make the right decision. $135 million of the American Rescue Plan funds will be allocated today, and the remaining funds later. This will provide St. Louis an opportunity to transform our city, and we will build even better. Next is Byron Brown from Worker with Unite Here.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Byron Brown. I'm a resident in Dutchtown, South St. Louis. I'm also a union steward for Local 74, a food service division at St. Louis University on the college campus. I'm here, for one, to congratulate our Mayor Tishaura Jones on becoming the first African-American female to hold the seat as mayor. There's a lot of issues that we are faced with here in St. Louis, and as I expected, Mayor Jones came out the gate addressing these issues. Issues that they've mentioned, such as housing and a utility assistance, service to help small business connect to federal aid, mobile vaccination clinics, community violence intervention programs, and many more. Mayor Tishaura Jones, I must also thank you for standing up for the working folks here in St. Louis. We see a brighter future with you and your team leading us. It's long overdue on transforming our communities into the great city we should be. Unite Here, Local 74, and its members stand behind our Mayor, Tishaura Jones, 100%. Thank you. I'm Byron Brown.
Thank you, Byron.
Good morning. My name is Tori Jamieson. I am a proud resident of the 15th Ward in Tower Grove, and I am a small business, a nonprofit organizer. I run a small community ministry. I'm here to speak because I am an impacted community member. I will qualify for the $500 stimulus, and it may not sound like a lot of money, but that is hard fought by Mayor Jones, the older lots of our older people, lots of our city staff. And the reality is that $500 for me as a low-income St. Louisan, alongside lots of my neighbors and the folks I serve, that $500 is life-changing for me. It would allow me to buy medications I currently can't afford that I need. It would allow me to make sure that there's food on my table and make sure my neighbors that struggle around me also aren't going hungry. It would make sure, honestly, that my power stays on until it would cover to about winter time. Like, those are huge things that currently are my everyday struggle, and that would really significantly change my life, and greatly impact us. For many St. Louisans, where that $500 helps, get their kids the shoes they need for school, right? And helps get them, supplies. So for folks with more privilege, that money may seem like nothing, but for folks like me, that's really life-changing. I really am so thankful to Mayor Jones and her administration for advocating for that, and for our older folks who have continued to make sure that that stimulus is part of the package that passed. Excited about the other opportunities, but this direct payment is incredibly invaluable. Thank you. I am Tori, and Jamieson, Jameson. My pronouns are they and them.
And what's the name of your ministry?
I run Lot's Wife Chaplaincy, LOT''S, and then WIFE, and Chaplaincy. The next person that I have to speak, I'm honored to step aside for Reverend Darryl Gray.
Good morning, everyone. I'm indeed grateful to have been invited here this morning. I'm Reverend Darryl Gray. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Baptist Ministers Union of St. Louis and vicinity. A few weeks ago, several clergy stood on the steps of City Hall to encourage President Reed to support the mayor's budget, specifically as it related to making sure that people who were most in need received the resources that they needed. We supported the mayor at that time because we believed that it was the right thing to do. I stand here today because the mayor continues to do the right thing as it relates to those in our community who suffer the most. I live in this community. I'm about 5 minutes away. I walked over here today. I'm glad to see my state representative here, Representative Kim Collins. We walk these streets. Last night, my neighbor had a gunshot in her house. Somebody shot through her house, aiming at one house, shooting in another house. These are the realities of this community. Mayor Jones understands the realities of these communities. She understood that we needed more money to make sure that black people were vaccinated. Not just that they received masks, but that they were vaccinated. That they wouldn't come to Rankin, that they wouldn't come to the convention center, that oftentimes they wouldn't even come to our churches to be vaccinated. So she made sure that in this budget, there was money so that people could go to knock on doors of people who needed to be vaccinated, who would not come to other places. She made sure that in this budget, that there was money for youth crime prevention, not just enforcement, not just intervention, but crime prevention. She made sure that there was money for the unhoused, because too often there are not enough resources for the unhoused. She made sure that she cared for the least of these. That's what her budget represented. And that's why myself and other fellow clergy members came out and stood on the steps to support her. We want to encourage all of our elected officials. We may never get this opportunity again, where we control the budget of this city. It may not ever happen again. And so while we control the budget, while we control the agenda, while we have a mayor like Ms. Jones, we want to make sure that north of Delmar, things begin to happen. We understand the politics of our city, but we're grateful that our mayor is looking beyond the politics of the city, the petty politics of the city. We're here to stand in support of her. We've disagreed at times, but she's never been disagreeable. She's always had an open mind. She's always had an open door. She's always been willing to talk. She's always been willing to explain her position. We're calling upon all elected officials in this city who are charged with caring for the least of these to be just as open-minded. And so I stand here with fellow clergy to support the mayor's signing of this budget and to pledge our continued support of this mayor as she continues to make our city better. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Neal Richardson. I am the Executive Director of St. Louis Development Corporation, which is the economic development arm of the city of St. Louis. But most importantly, I am a lifelong resident of this city. I grew up just a couple blocks away from where we stand today, and also an alum of Rankin Technical College. So I deeply understand the impacts and the historical nature of what's happening today as the mayor is signing Board Bill 2 to provide direct relief to our residents and our businesses and our neighborhoods to give them the much needed support they need in order to survive and thrive. As we've already heard today, the disproportionate impacts of COVID-19 has really impacted our marginalized and most vulnerable residents, businesses, and neighborhoods, which has elevated the need for us to prioritize economic justice, to build a resilient economy, to respond to any of the natural disasters, global pandemics, and other economic downturns that will destroy our economy and our neighborhoods. This is even a more critical matter for the city of St. Louis, as 59% of our neighborhoods and 52% of our residents are located in census tracts with incomes that are 60% lower than the area median income in the region, as well as having a poverty rate of more than 25%. And in response to these realities, we are focused on addressing these matters head on, together, through strategic and long-term investments of human and financial capital, and bringing a physical presence to the most historically underserved communities within the city of St. Louis. We are doing this through the establishment of economic empowerment hubs, so our residents who are in the most need have the greatest proximity to opportunity. In these hubs, we will provide access to workforce development in partnership with the St. Louis Public Schools and SLATE. We will build a business ecosystem to support our small and women minority-owned business entities for them to enter, grow, and thrive in their respective industries. And we will provide residential support that will close the wealth gap and focus on wealth-building principles to ensure that our residents have access to home ownership, home repairs, and anti-displacement. Because as I said, I have been committed to this city and this region, and so has my family. And what we are aiming to do today is to ensure that the residents who have been historically here and committed to this city as anchors in these neighborhoods receive the necessary support to survive, but also receive the greatest economic benefit as investment comes to the city of St. Louis and specifically in North City. SLDC will work collaboratively with local, regional, and national partners to build on this ARPA funds that have been laid out today. But it's very important and imperative for us to understand that the foundation that we lay has to be strong. And that foundation is supported by the residents that are here. And so this board bill today allows us to move forward to securing additional funding and Build Back Better grants, our infrastructure resources, and other funding sources. So as the mayor and I are really focused on how we move this city forward, as Dr. King stated, from civil rights to silver rights. In this moment, it's important for us to remember his very profound statement that an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And through the signing of this board bill, we are setting the foundation of achieving economic justice for the city of St. Louis. Thank you.
We do have time for a few questions, if anyone has any.
Mayor, do you have any concern? I was unaware of the line item veto power. Last time it was used.
2002, in appropriations in the first ward. The mayor then line item vetoed the. I'm sorry, I have it written down. The mayor uses line item veto at that time in 2002.
You would know perhaps the Board of Aldermen have the ability to override.
They do have the ability to override.
See what happens.
We'll see what happens.
Okay. Thank you.
And Mayor, just good morning. For the layman who's trying to scratch his head and follow government, what is it that's wrong with these provisions that you vetoed? If you could explain.
So our city councilor, our comptroller, our CARES and ARPA audit consultants, and our longtime federal lobbyist or federal consultant all agreed that the provisions of the general economic development provisions that were in Section 6 of the bill were outside of federal guidelines, did not fall within federal guidelines. And we can't afford to get this wrong, because if we spent those dollars in the wrong way, then the federal government could exercise its clawback provisions and we would have to pay that money back.
Now, you and Lewis Reed have sort of been like Godzilla and Mothra. You've always been at each other politically. What can you say to convince somebody who might think, oh, she's just vetoing this because Lewis Reed's her rival?
No, I am vetoing this because it's the right thing to do and it's within Treasury guidelines. We can't afford to fix this on the back end. These are federal dollars and we have to get this right.
Mayor, on a day when we should be celebrating this progressive advancement of the COVID relief funds, we have the City Justice Center flag hanging over our heads. Can you address what happened again this weekend? Is there any end in sight? We've heard before that this started in the last administration. Are you pledging to make sure this gets fixed?
Well, there are several things that are happening with the City Justice Center that were happening long before I became mayor. For starters, the locks have not been working. Preventive maintenance has not been done on the facility for years. And there is a culture there that has to be changed. And so we're working on all of those things in tandem, and we're being transparent as possible as we do that. So we have a backup plan in the CJC Annex, making sure that we can fix the locks as quickly as possible. But it's not just about the locks. I want to make that clear. It's about the culture of the organization. It's about the people in the organization, and we want to make sure that we are changing that culture to one that where our detainees are treated with dignity and respect, and also working with our criminal justice ecosystem to make sure we can move people through the system as well.
But we're also hearing now from guards who are feeling unsafe to go to work. Is there any assurance you can give them that you've got their backs as well as the dignity of the inmates?
We have been responding to the guards as frequently as we have responded to the inmates. They have our ear through the Public Safety Department, and they have used it, and we have responded.
Are you just frustrated that this keeps happening and kind of overshadow some of the more progressive things you're looking at?
Well, I mean, this is part of the job, right? You got to take the good with the bad. Everything's not going to come up roses every day. And these were issues that happened long before I was mayor. And so we're going to try to address them and make sure they don't happen again.
Mayor, when the vaccine first came out, I remember you said, it was a very memorable line, that we don't want it to be involuntary, like show me your papers. But now in some parts of the country, they're talking about a health passport where you would have to do just that. What is your position on that?
I recently had to show my vaccine card to someone to get access to a building. So I realized that there's been a little more hesitancy than people initially thought that there would be with the vaccine. And so I think that the country is at a moment where they have to push a little harder.
Would you support vaccine passports in the St. Louis area?
We are looking into all of our opportunities to make sure that more people get vaccinated.
And last question, what about the critic who would say, this is, I think Eric Schmidt says, this is un-American. You shouldn't have to segregate people, the vaccinated, the unvaccinated, show me your papers, and it kind of feels totalitarian.
Well, I think Eric Schmidt is also flip-flopping because he with other Republicans, unanimously supported getting our children vaccinated against meningitis several years ago when there was a meningitis outbreak on our college campuses. So he was for vaccines before he was against them.
Mayor, just to clarify, when you said you're looking at all your different ways to deal with the vaccine issue, are you looking specifically at imposing some kind of health order that would require so-called passports to get into buildings?
I can't speak about that right now, but we are looking at all of our options to try to encourage people to get vaccinated. We need to get our vaccination rates up, especially in communities of color, because 80% of new cases, or over 75% of new cases, are African American, and we're a little over 20% vaccinated.
Now, you had said previously, I believe, that you were looking at just regarding city employees, the idea of requiring city employees to be vaccinated. Have you decided on that? Probably not, but are you still looking at that?
Still looking at all of our options. We have an incentive program going right now, and I don't have the recent numbers, but we're trying to use the carrot before the stick.
Mayor Jones, you said that you plan to develop a separate economic development plan. Is that separate from the SLDC's economic justice plan, or is that connected in some way? And how much money do you imagine would be necessary for that plan?
It is connected with the previous report that the previous administration did. We're just going a little step further because there was no action plan associated with that report, and so we are developing an action strategy to actually implement that in addition to some other things that we're adding to it.
So this is the economic justice plan that...
Part of it.
And where do you imagine that funding will come from?
As our executive director said, and as I said in my remarks, there are other grants that we're applying for. There's a Build Back Better grant that we're applying for, which is up to $75 million. Their infrastructure package has still yet to be determined, as well as a $3.5 million reconciliation package. So there's a lot of money coming down the pipeline, and so we are trying to use these funds for direct relief and some for infrastructure, but again, there will be tons of other federal funds coming down the pipeline that we'll be able to use.
All right, we got time for one more.
Over the last week, we had 3 women of color, 2 older and 1 younger child, murdered in the city of St. Louis. While the crime rate is down, is there any concern about changing demographics on some of the kids in the city?
Yes, it's very concerning to me, and recently it hit home for me. The double murder in Ferguson was my cousin, Maya, and she was just 27 years old, and she was 2 months pregnant. And it troubles me because we're at a point in our society where they feel like the only answer is a gun. There are more answers to solving our problems between each other than shooting each other. And so while my family is preparing to bury her, and we just lost her father several years ago, it's hard for us. It's hard for us, and I'm sure it's hard for all of our families that have been visited by gun violence. But as mayor, I remain committed to investing money in community violence intervention programs and using all of the tools in the toolbox to get our crime rates down and address violence head on.
Thank you all very much.